Welcome to this workshop on kindergarten math with confidence. I'm Kate Snow, the author of Math with Confidence, and I'm really thrilled to be with all of you today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me before we get into the content. So I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I have two kids, 15 and 18. And I have a degree in math and then as well as a master's degree in math education. I've always been passionate about math education. Even as a high schooler, I was always tutoring my friends and helping them with math. And I've really pursued that throughout my professional career, but it's kind of been a little bit of everything. I've done everything from teach public school fifth grade to tutor high schoolers and middle schoolers. I homeschooled my own kids when they were younger. I taught a lot of co-op classes around town in Grand Rapids. And so I've done a lot of different things in my career as a math educator. And it was really my time as a mom to my kids, a homeschool mom to my kids, where I really realized how much math is just a source of stress for a lot of homeschool parents. We'd sit around the lunch table in the co-op, the church gym that was our co-op cafeteria. And I would just hear from my friends about how they felt so good about what they were doing in their homeschool, but sometimes very stressed out in math, not feeling very confident in their teaching, or just not feeling very sure that they were really doing their best by their kids. And so that's what inspired me to start writing books for homeschoolers. This was back in the era when blogs were big. And so for as a New Year's resolution one year, I Googled how to start a blog and started Kate's Homeschool Math Help, my website. And from there, it's just kind of grown. I started with writing a preschool book, then the Math Facts That Stick books, and then now working on the Math with Confidence books. And throughout, my mission has just been to equip parents to teach their kids math and to feel good about their teaching, know they're giving their kid a really great, solid foundation in math. So I'm going to turn on my slides here so I can show you what we're going to be covering today. All right, so here's our agenda, except it disappeared on me, so you're going to have to give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay, now I've got it. So here's our agenda today. We are going to be starting with the goals and philosophy of the Math with Confidence program as a whole. This applies to all the grade levels. It's a kindergarten through fifth grade program at this point, and next year the sixth grade level will be coming out, and that will be the final level in the series. Then I'll give you an overview of the kindergarten level of how the books are structured and how the lessons are structured. Third, I'll give you some information about where your child will learn this year. Fourth, we'll talk about how to prep for the year. And then fifth, I'll answer some common questions. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A. So Donna Hunter, who is my assistant and a veteran homeschool mom and also a pilot tester for the upper grades of Math with Confidence, she's here with us today. And so she'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A for me as I'm speaking. And so if you have questions as we go, please feel free to put them in there. She will answer them if she's able to provide the answer. She'll flag some for me to answer at the end of the time. And I just wanted to say that I won't be able to answer every question. I want to really focus the questions on how to use the kindergarten level. So I'll be especially looking for questions about that to answer at the end. If you have questions about placement, I'll also be talking about that in the common questions area. All right. So that's our agenda today. We're going to take about 45 minutes to an hour. And if you have already bought your books, I recommend grabbing them to have nearby because you might want to refer to them as I'm talking. All right. So first, the goals and philosophy of Math with Confidence, and this is really talking about the program as a whole. So there's three main goals for the program. One is developing conceptual understanding so that kids understand the why of math and not just the how. They see math as a set of connected connections, relationships between topics, not just a whole bunch of I memorized this procedure, I memorized that procedure, I memorized that procedure. This kind of conceptual understanding leads to deeper learning and better retention. Second, the second goal is proficiency with essential skills, because you can have all the conceptual understanding in the world, but if you can't actually solve problems, it's not going to get you very far. And so one of my goals in the program is to make sure to provide kids with plenty of practice and with clear instruction for how to solve problems so that they become proficient and fluent at the important skills. And then third, my goal is that for kids will develop a positive attitude towards math. I try to make the lessons fun, engaging, conversational, developmentally appropriate, so kids feel really confident about what they're doing. They feel and they enjoy math and they see it as a great time to learn and to enjoy. They don't have to love math. Math is not going to be every kid's favorite subject, and that's just fine. But I certainly hope that they will approach their math lessons with a positive attitude and not dread or fear. And so those are the goals of the program. And then the philosophy of the program is more about how I've organized it to support those goals. First of all, Math with Confidence focuses on one new concept at a time. Each lesson just builds a tiny little level it builds on the next, oh, sorry. Each new lesson builds on the previous lesson. It adds one new layer of learning very gradually and incrementally so that children always understand what they're doing. There's no huge leaps, but rather a logical progression that just very gently leads children towards confidence in math. Math educators often call this a mastery approach to new topics, but that doesn't mean that kids have to master every single skill before they go on to the next one. It's more a focused way of looking at one topic at a time and really diving deep into it. And then second, Math with Confidence has daily practice and review. And so this helps develop proficiency so that they're getting the conceptual understanding with each new lesson, but then also the practice and review that helps develop the fluency. Because getting fluent with any new skill takes a lot of practice. There's ongoing review of core skills, which is called a spiral approach to review. And I space out the review so that kids' brains have lots of time to absorb it. They don't have to absorb it all at once, but it can be spaced out. They can become more fluent with those core skills over time. And then another part of the philosophy of the program is that it provides thorough, rigorous coverage of grade level topics. In general, each level of Math with Confidence is roughly equivalent to US public schools. That doesn't mean that the content is taught exactly like it would be in a public school, because that varies a lot from school to school anyway. But it's generally covers roughly the same topics. Kids do tend to move in and out of the public school system and homeschool. And so I want to make sure that if you pulled your child out of a public school system, you know about where to place them and vice versa. It's also Math with Confidence is a middle of the road difficulty level when compared to other homeschool math programs. So it's not the easiest, but also not the most challenging. It's kind of middle of the road. And I aim to provide incremental learning and doable practice problems. And that's because those having things be incremental and doable are so key to helping kids develop math with confidence, for them to feel good about what they're doing in math. They would learn a small bit each day, but those small bits add up to a lot of learning. And that it's doable and that kids can use what they've actually learned in their lessons to complete the problems. Math doesn't have to be hard to be effective. And often when programs are more challenging, it just leads to more frustration and not more learning. And so I aim to make Math with Confidence a pleasant program to use, one that you can enjoy and not have a lot of frustration with. But that doesn't mean that you get middle of the road results with Math with Confidence. And I know many of you in this seminar especially are kindergarten parents just starting out with homeschooling, just starting out teaching your kids math. So standardized tests are probably quite a ways away from what you're thinking about. But I wanted to share with you these results from the pilot test. I asked my fifth grade pilot test students to take a standardized test at the end of their pilot test year. And you'll see that this circled part shows that their percentile rank, the median percentile rank was 99th. So that means that half of the students in the pilot test scored at the 99th percentile or above. And many more scored at the 99th percentile. Very few were even below the 90th percentile. And so I just want to reassure you that even though it's a middle of the road difficulty program, it doesn't mean that kids don't learn deeply and effectively. Okay, so let's get in here into kindergarten. So first of all, the most important thing to know is that you need two books. There's an instructor guide and a student workbook. And about 95% of the program is in the instructor guide for the kindergarten level. It contains scripted, hands-on lessons for teaching your child. The workbook is a little bit more of the cherry on top. It's just a super quick page to do at the end of the lesson so your child gets practice writing numbers and doing a little bit of written work each day. Some people even teach the program without the workbook, but not vice versa. You've got to be using the instructor guide if you're really going to get the most out of the program. And you can also buy these as PDFs from my publisher. If you prefer, if you're living overseas, don't have access to the printed books, or prefer to have them that way. The book is divided into units, weeks, and lessons. So there's 10 units split over 32 weeks with 4 lessons per week. That doesn't mean that you have to teach 4 lessons every calendar week. You can, of course, adjust that based on your schedule. So it doesn't, you could start on a Wednesday and end on the following Thursday if that's what a week looks like for your family. And expect to spend about 15 minutes per lesson. Like I said, most of that is doing the one-on-one teaching but with you and your child. And then the workbook is a very small part of that 15 minutes. And so the unit overview at the beginning of each unit tells you what your child will learn. And then there's a week overview at the beginning of each week that also gives you a preview for that week. It includes what your child will learn, a short feature called Teaching Math with Confidence. This is kind of like a little bit of professional development for you as a math teacher. It helps you understand what this week is trying to accomplish and helps you grow as a math teacher while you're teaching your child. There's a list of any household items you'll need for the week. Don't let this be daunting. These are things like a small toy and a pair of shoes for this week 1. And you'll only use these occasionally. We'll talk more about the math kit a little bit further along. And then the last 2 sections in the week overview provide an optional enrichment activity and a picture book that you can use with your child. You can do these whenever you want. Some families choose to do them on the 5th day of the week if they like to teach math 5 days a week. And then here's an example of a lesson from the instructor guide. It's lesson 1.4, so week 1, lesson 4, and it's on the number 4. And I'm just going to walk through kind of what the main features are in each lesson. So it begins with this box that shows the purpose and materials for each part of the lesson. And then there's a quick review and warm-up activity. This is the main way that review is incorporated in kindergarten so that the workbook pages aren't too long. So these provide a great opportunity to review those core skills and get fluency with them. Then there's the hands-on teaching activities. You can see that it's all written out, and there's 2 activities in this one, introducing the number 4 and folding a paper into 4 rectangles. And then finally, the child ends by completing the workbook page. And just to zoom in to show what the text looks like, you'll see that there is bold text that shows what you say. And then the gray boxes are just notes to you as the teacher that help you that explain what's happening or give you a little bit of extra options. Those you don't even have to read if you don't have time, but they just provide a little extra information. So I've written the book so you can literally pick them up, open them, and start reading and be ready to go. So they don't require a lot of preparation ahead of time, and they're scripted if you don't feel very confident teaching math. If you want to put in your own words, that's great. I fully support that. But if you really want to know just exactly what to say, it's all right there. Oops. And then this is an example of a workbook page. This is the one from lesson 1.4. And so each workbook page begins with a little bit of number writing at the top, and then a very quick activity for your child to do at the bottom. I recommend completing these right after you do the instructor guide activities and to check them immediately to provide feedback for your child. And you can always adjust these based on your child's fine motor abilities. Kids have a real range in kindergarten. And so if your child has trouble holding a pencil, you can have them trace the numbers with a crayon or their finger instead. And you can also do the bottom orally or use, for example, you can use other materials. So for example, in this one, you could have your child use 4 counters and put 4 counters in each box rather than drawing them if that drawing is difficult. All right, so in this next section, we'll talk about what your child will learn. And the key areas of study in kindergarten are pretty much what you'd expect. Developing deep number sense with the numbers to 20, counting to 100, beginning addition and subtraction. Your child will learn how to write equations to match joining and splitting situations or joining and takeaway situations and to use the plus sign, minus sign, and equal sign. Your child will do some work with shapes and spatial skills, including giving directions with right and left and making patterns. And then there's just a gentle introduction to measurement, helping your child understand the idea that we can measure objects in many ways, and then working with a calendar, clock, and that also includes coins. And I want to just dive a little bit into this top one of the key area of study, developing deep number sense with the numbers to 20. The scripted lessons and the instructor guides will give you all the details of how to teach these lessons, how to teach your child these skills. But today I just wanted to focus on this idea of number sense and help you understand the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish in kindergarten. Because having the big picture often helps us make good decisions when we're in the details of the day-to-day. And so many children enter kindergarten already counting to 10, 20, or even beyond. But they usually view numbers kind of like the ABC song. So just as kids think A, B, C, D, E, F, G, they think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's just a sequence of words that we say in order that we use to count things. And so they might be able to count quite high, but they don't necessarily have a deeper sense of how the numbers relate to each other. So for a kindergartner who still views numbers in this way, asking them to find 4 plus 5 is kind of like asking what letter is 5 after D. The only way they have to solve it is go E, F, G, H, I, or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Counting's their only tool. And while that's a great starting place, it's an important part of having number sense, it's only a start. Kids need a lot more than that to really develop the skills they'll need to learn addition, subtraction, and beyond in upper grades. And so number sense is this deep understanding of numbers. It includes counting, but it also includes these other skills like subitizing, which is visually recognizing quantities. We'll get into that more in just a second. It includes comparing and ordering numbers. So for example, knowing that 7 is more than 4, or that if I have 11, 10, and 15, that they are in order, to put them in order goes 10, 11, 15. Number sense includes knowing relationships between numbers. So for example, knowing that 2 more than 8 is 10, or that 1 less than 8 is 7. And number sense also includes breaking numbers apart and putting them back together again, and being able to do that in many different ways. Addition, subtraction, they all involve number sense. They're part of number sense, and your child will develop deeper and deeper number sense with greater and greater numbers over the course of elementary school. And so I know most of these objectives of number sense, or most of these components of number sense, are pretty intuitive, like counting, comparing, adding and subtracting, breaking numbers apart. But subitizing is a little less familiar, so I'll spend just a few minutes talking about that. I'll give you just kind of a quick crash course. So subitizing is being able to tell how many there are without counting one by one. And there's 2 different kinds of subitizing. One is called perceptual subitizing, and most people can do this with about 4 or 5 objects. If you just see a group of 3, 4, 5 objects, you can probably just tell immediately how many there are. You don't have to count them. You don't have to think about it. You can just see it. Conceptual subitizing is using number relationships to know how many. And so this is a skill that is learned and has to be practiced. And working on conceptual subitizing helps children visualize the relationships between numbers and developing an intuitive sense of these relationships. And of course, your child does not need to know the word subitizing, perceptual, conceptual. This is just teacher knowledge, just good things for you to know as you're teaching your child so that you understand where you're heading with it. Okay, so I'm going to show you some dots here in just a second. And I'm just take a quick look, see how fast you recognize how many there are. Okay, so you look at that, you can probably tell immediately there are 4 dots. It's an example of perceptual subitizing. You don't need to count, you can just tell immediately how many there are. Okay, now I'm going to show you a different array or arrangement. And now with this one, I bet you know how many there are immediately, but not because you can just immediately see it the way you could with the 4. For this, you're using some knowledge of number relationships, knowing that there's 3 groups of 3, so it must be 9. This is an example of conceptual subitizing, where you use the number relationships to figure out the total, and organizing the dots allows you to use what you know about numbers to figure it out. Your child probably can't do this yet, but they'll learn how to. And a lot of these activities in kindergarten at first aim at helping kids move from that perceptual subitizing of just being able to recognize a quantity that's less than five, to conceptual subitizing, where they can recognize quantities that are greater than five because they organize them in different ways and use number relationships to find the total. And there's many benefits of subitizing, but this is just kind of a quick summary of them. One is that kids begin to learn and visualize number combinations. That, of course, sets the foundation for learning those addition and subtraction facts. It also helps children understand how numbers relate to the important benchmarks in our number system, like 5 and 10. Again, that is more preparation for learning the addition and subtraction facts. And it also previews place value because children start to view numbers as not just that ABCD list of numbers in a row, but they start to view numbers as meaning quantities, and they're able to take those quantities apart in different ways. And in Math with Confidence, one of the important visuals that you'll use to help your child subitize and develop these skills is the 10 frame. So the 10 frame is 10 boxes in a row with a dividing line in the middle. And you can see that the dividing line splits it into two groups of five. So with practice, your child will be able to tell immediately that there are 9 dots here because there's a group of 5 on the left and a group of 4 on the right for a total of 9. And this makes it easier to visualize numbers and also relate them to those important benchmarks. So for example, you can see at a glance when you use the 10 frame that 9 is 1 less than 10, or that 9 and 1 make 10. You can see that 9 is 4 more than 5, and also that 5 and 4 make 9. And the 10 frame isn't the only way that you will help your child learn these combinations of 5 and some more, or learn to subitize, but it's one of the important ones. In addition to it, you'll also use fingers, coins, tallies as ways to represent numbers. And you'll do the same thing with combinations of 10 and some more as your child learns the teen numbers. So all of these tools together will help your child develop that deep number sense with the numbers up to 20. I just wanted to give you kind of a sneak peek for how this is going to help your child down the road. Because by doing all of this important number sense work in kindergarten, your child will develop that intuition that they need for memorizing the addition and subtraction facts in first grade and second grade. And it really especially helps prepare kids to learn the addition and subtraction facts without counting on their fingers, without relying on counting and thinking of the numbers like the ABC sequence. And by visualizing facts, they gives them kind of a stepping stone to full fluency. And so, for example, here in first grade, you'll use double 10 frames to represent the number 13. And so to figure out the answer to 13 minus 5, your child will use a strategy like, oh, well, 13 is 10 and 3, so I take away 3, and then I take away 2 more. That gives me 8, so 13 minus 5 is 8. So they'll learn strategies like this. They'll learn to visualize on the 10 frame as a stepping stone towards being able to just know 13 minus 5 is 8. And then this kind of subitizing work that you'll do in kindergarten will also help prepare your child to learn about place value. When children only have that counting sense of numbers, 17 is just the number after 16 and before 18. It's hard for kids to understand what the digits in 17 mean. And so by visualizing and breaking numbers into parts in kindergarten, they'll be ready to understand better what each digit means when they get to first grade. All right, so that was kind of a preview, just a quick overview of number sense and subitizing in kindergarten. And now we'll get to things I know many homeschool moms are thinking about this time of year, which is how to prep for the year. And so I'm just going to walk through a really simple 4-step plan here to help you get prepped for starting your school year. And I will send you this plan in an email after I finish the workshop today. So don't worry about writing it down. It will all be coming to you in your email. All right, so the first step, make sure you read how to use this book. It's on pages 2 through 9 in your instructor guide. It includes a lot of the information I'm sharing today, but also more. And if you have questions throughout the year, often you'll find that the answer to those questions might be in that how to use this book. So it's an important thing to familiarize yourself with now. Second, make your math kit. So I'm going to talk for a bit here about what you need in your math kit and show you what it can look like. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm just going to make sure that you can see me. All right. So here is my kindergarten math kit. And you can see I just use a little shoebox. This is really all you need. I like to try to keep things really simple when I'm organizing math manipulatives because I feel like the more complicated a system is, the less likely it is to be put back after each lesson, and the harder it is to find things for the next lesson. So I stick with the basics. I use shoebox, and then I put each manipulative in like a Ziploc slider bag. These are these ones where you can just slide the top open so that it's a lot easier for little kids to be able to just open and close them. And there are just a few things you'll need in your math kit for kindergarten. So one thing you'll need is counters, 100 counters. It helps if they are 3/4 of an inch across or less so that they fit on the 10 frames. And you want to have at least 10 of a different color because sometimes you'll need two different colors. You need at least 100 because you'll be counting to 100 with your child. But sometimes people like to have about 20 of something that's like really fun or easy to grab, like erasers from the Target dollar section or from the dollar store, because you'll be focusing a lot on those numbers to 20. So having really fun counters for up to 20 is really a lot of fun for kids. The second thing you'll need are pattern blocks. And pattern blocks are this very specific kind of set of blocks. They include like hexagon, diamonds, squares, trapezoids. And you can find these online, either plastic, foam, wood, whatever you want. You don't need a huge set. Something about this size is plenty. But you'll use these to help your child develop spatial skills and learn about shapes. And then you'll also need coins this year. You'll need 20 pennies, 20 nickels, 10 dimes. You'll use these for helping your child represent numbers, for counting by tens. So you can use either real coins or just the plastic kind, or fake coins. If you're outside the US, you can use whatever your local currency is, just ones, fives, and tens. And then lastly, you'll need 2 packs of index cards. I like the 3x5 index cards. You'll use these for making number cards for playing games, and then you'll also sometimes use them for little labels within the lessons. And then beyond that, you just need paper and pencils, and that is it. So don't feel a need to make it any more complicated than that. Just stick those things in Ziploc bags and you're good to go. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. Um, so you'll make your math kit after you read the introduction. There's that list, but it's going to be in that handout that I will send you. And then the next step is to copy or print the essential Blackline masters. And so here is just a view of what those some of the Blackline masters look like. There's the 10 frame, double 10 frames, some number examples for writing, and a 100 chart. And you can find these in the back of the instructor guide, or you can find them at my publisher's website, welltrainedmind.com/MWC. Sometimes people like to get them there so that they don't have to cut up their book or copy it and it gets misaligned and stuff. And it's not required, but I recommend that you put the Blackline masters in page protectors or laminate them and then stick them in a binder. It just makes it a lot easier to hold on to them. And you'll be using these essential ones throughout the year, so it makes them more durable. I'm going to stop my screen share again for a second just to show you what my Blackline Master binder looks like. And so this binder, you can see that I have all the grade levels in it. And so one binder holds all of the Blackline Masters for all of the grades. And that's really handy, especially if you have kids in multiple grade levels. It's nice just to have one binder and know that everything is in there. And so in the kindergarten level, it's just a few pages. And so we just got the 10 frame, the double 10 frame, and so on. And also note that there are a couple extra Blackline masters in that section of the instructor guide that you probably don't need. So for example, there is a pattern block template, and if you have real pattern blocks, you don't need to use it. I just include it as an option for sometimes family use these, say overseas where they can't get access to pattern blocks. Don't you color and cut out all those pattern blocks if you don't need them. Your real pattern blocks are a much better option. Okay, and then oops, gotta go back to screen sharing. There we go. So that's the Blackline Masters. And then the fourth step in prepping for the year is just making sure that you find the answer keys and the helpful resources in the back of the book online. I really recommend doing this just so you know what's available to you should you need it throughout the year. You'll find an answer key at the end of each week in the instruction book. And of course, this is kindergarten math. I'm sure you'll know the answers just fine. But if you're ever not sure what the directions are asking for, this is a great place to look. The scope and sequence is another helpful resource that's at the back of the instructor guide, and it lists all the main objectives of the year. If you need to submit a portfolio to your state or homeschool evaluator, or submit information to a virtual charter school, this often has everything you need all in one place. There's a list of the math books of the week. These are these optional picture books that are recommended in the weekly overview for each week. They're all listed here so that if you want to put in a bunch of library requests at once, or if you want to order a bunch of books at once, you can find them all here. And also just a little tip, a lot of these are available online as YouTube read-alouds. And some Math with Confidence mom parents have even put together playlists of them. So if you search on YouTube, you'll likely find those. There's also a full materials list in the back of the book. The top has the items you'll need for your math kit, and then the bottom is other supplies. You might take a quick look over this at the beginning of the year, but mostly just to reassure yourself that it's all things you have. I really tried to use simple household items in this section. So it's things like 6 small toys, 5 books with varying heights. And don't drive yourself crazy trying to gather this all now. It's much easier, just grab them when you need them for the lesson. One other really helpful resource is online at my publisher's website, Well Trained Mind. So it's welltrainedmind.com, MWC. And there's quite a few things here that are helpful. First of all, in that kindergarten instructor sample, it has the Blackline Masters at the end of it. So that's where you can find those to print out. There's also a kindergarten student sample, a sample of the student workbook. And that's where, if you haven't bought your books yet and want to see what it looks like, you can take a good look there. If your child is colorblind or has color vision deficiency, a few of the student pages in the workbook don't work well for children with CVD. And so you can find replacement pages to print out there. And there's also a kindergarten completion certificate. Some of the workbooks have them in the back, but if yours is missing it, you get it there. And then the bottom, you'll see full color corrected student pages 2025 VersaPrint. Unfortunately, there was a small glitch with the software for the printing of the workbooks this summer. So if you've bought your workbook recently, there might be 3 pages that have a misprint. It's pages 3, 18, and 37. And they're all pages where there should be a green apple, but instead the computer program, for some reason, put in 3 small plastic bags instead. So my apologies and apologies from my publisher. They have put the corrected pages there, both full color and in like a printer friendly that uses less ink. So you can just print those out and use them in place of those incorrect pages. And then the last resource I wanted to tell you about is the Facebook community online. There's the link to it, and I'll send this to you in the handouts afterward. This is just such a lovely part of the internet, this community. There's, I think, 11,000 members now, and it's just so supportive, positive, helpful. If you run into a snag, if you'd like to get other people's feedback, it's a great way to get information from other parents who are using Math with Confidence. So I highly recommend it, even if you don't use Facebook for much else. A lot of different curriculums have really wonderful communities online that support that of parents who are using them, and it's a great way to get support as a homeschool parent. Okay. And so now I'm going to talk about common questions that people often have about kindergarten math with confidence. And so this is a great moment also just to remind you that if you've got questions, that Q&A is available to you. Feel free to put them in there if I don't address your question in this section. So one common question, how do I know if my child is ready to start? In general, I recommend that kids be at least 5 when they start kindergarten math with confidence, just as they would be to start kindergarten in a public school. Your child does not need to have completed a formal preschool math program before starting the program, but they should be ready for a short lesson and some written work. If you have a real wiggly young 5-year-old who is just not interested in sitting with you for 10 minutes to do math, it might be better to wait a few months. There's a lot of brain development that happens in kids this age, And when kids are not ready, they're not ready. And so I don't recommend delaying too long. I also uh, recommend preserving your sanity and doing what really seems best for your real kid in front of you. On the other hand, some have 4-year-olds who are interested in learning math. So my 4-year-old's interested in numbers and eager to start. Is that okay? Now, if for a 4-year-old, I do recommend using preschool math at home instead. That's play-based activities, no workbook, that start to develop some of this number sense at a slightly smaller level with the numbers to 10 mostly. But at that said, observe your child. If you have a child who's really excited about workbook work, who has older siblings who are doing school and wants to do school too, it's fine to go ahead and start the kindergarten level. I just recommend not rushing and watch your kid. You'll be able to tell if it's too much, if some of the concepts start to get too abstract and not what your 4-year-old can handle yet. Be prepared to slow down or pause or put it away for a few months. You really do know your kids best, and there's no hard and fast rule about this. Now, sometimes when people get their kindergarten books in the mail, they take a look at the first few weeks and they're like, wait, this is kindergarten level? This looks really easy. Is it really kindergarten? But yes, it really is. If you talk to friends who have kids in public school kindergarten, I promise you that what they're learning over the kindergarten year is the same as what your child will learn. I just started the kindergarten math with confidence level very slow and gentle to help kids get in the routine of sitting down with their parent for lessons, holding the pencil, doing the workbook. And so the first few weeks are as much about getting in the routine of doing school together as they are about the math content. If they're way too slow for your kid, feel free to combine lessons or move through them more quickly. Another placement question that people often have is that something along the lines of, my child's very good with numbers. Should we start with first grade? And again, I would look to your child first. Think about whether your child's ready for longer lessons. The first grade lessons are just a little bit longer. And there's 2 pages of written work each day. A lot of 5-year-olds aren't ready for that, even if they're interested in numbers and do pretty well with them. You could always scribe for your child in that case, but just know that that's what you're committing to then. You're committing to spending a bit longer on that math lesson every day. Um, I recommend checking the first grade placement information before you do that. That's available on my website or in the Introduction to the First Grade Math with Confidence book. And overall, to aim for the Goldilocks challenge level. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. You don't want a child who's super bored, who's rolling their eyes at you because you're asking them to do stuff that they totally know how to do. But you also don't want a child who's crying or frustrated or in tears because their brain isn't ready to handle what you're asking them to do. And the goal is really to end the year feeling confident and positive about math. So choose whichever level you think is going to best make that happen for your individual child. So beyond placement, another question that parents often have is, how do I know whether to stick with the lesson or move on? And my main advice for that is to look at the unit checkpoint. The unit checkpoint is at the end of every unit and tells you what to expect, what kind of an average kindergartner will be able to do at the end at this point in the book. And it also includes a section on, is your child ready to move on? And keep in mind that most skills do not have to be mastered before you move on to the next unit. So what you're really looking for is that your child has pretty decent conceptual understanding of what you've taught them in that unit, but they don't have to necessarily be fluent with all the skills. So for example, I think it's in unit 1 where kids work on learning the combinations that make 10, like 7 and 3, 8 and 2, 9 and 1, and so on. And children do not have to have those all memorized before moving on past that unit, but they should have an understanding of like, oh, there's these numbers, we combine them to make 10. I have some idea of how to find that. And look at those unit checkpoints for kind of more details at the end of each unit about what your child should be able to do at that point. In general, I suggest keep continuing to teach each lesson until you get to that unit checkpoint, and then use that as a moment where you can stop and evaluate whether you need to review anything or spend a little more time on it or move on to the next unit. Another question I sometimes get is regarding materials. Some kids don't like the 10 frame, and it can be a little bit of a pain sometimes arranging all those counters on that 10 frame, and it can be the slowest part of kindergarten lessons, which is important if you have a baby and a toddler or a third grader and sixth grader you need to get to. So here's a couple suggestions for ways to handle that if your child doesn't like the 10 frame or you feel like it's taking a lot of time. One is to use fun counters. Often if your child gets to choose what things you use on the 10 frame, that makes that dislike go away. But you can also put the 10 frame in a page protector and then just use a dry erase marker to mark X's or circles on it rather than actually arranging counters. That can go a little bit faster and then you just erase them when you do the next exercise. And another option, if you want to get something else, is you can use this little 20-bead abacus called a Reckon Rec. And it's arranged in groups of 5, just in the same way that there's that dividing line on the 10 frame between the groups of 5. And so helps children still learn how numbers relate to the benchmark of 5 and 10, but does it in a slightly different way. There's also 100-bead abacuses available where the beads are grouped in 5s, so which is another option to use. And again, regarding materials, you'll be using index cards throughout this year to write numbers, and then they're used in a variety of games, from things like putting numbers in order from least to greatest, playing Make 10, Go Fish. But they can be a bit to organize, and sometimes people feel like they're drowning in them. So what I recommend you do is that you take 4 envelopes or zip top bags right now before you start the year, and you label them as shown here. And I will include this picture in that handout I'm going to send you, so you don't have to write it all down right now. But if you just put the cards in those envelopes as you make them, it will all be a lot easier. And some families, I've read this in the Math with Confidence Facebook group, some families suggest using blank playing cards rather than index cards, especially for the number cards, because it just makes them so much easier to use for games. Index cards, it's harder to pick them up. They're a little slidey. And so playing cards make it feel more like a real game if that's what you use to make your number cards. And you can buy a set of those blank playing cards on Amazon for like less than $10. So they're easy to get. Okay, and so we're getting towards the end here. I'm going to do my top 10 tips for teaching math, and then we'll get to the Q&A. And I'm going to do these kind of quickly so that we have time for Q&A, but they'll be in the handout that you can download after the workshop as well. So first of all, avoid the curriculum overcomplication danger zone. You're in a perilous time right now before the school starts where it can be so tempting to want to buy all of the things. There are so many great math supplements out there, math curriculum. I highly recommend just buying one curriculum, even if it's not Math with Confidence, and just using one curriculum and teaching your heart out with just that one curriculum. Don't get anything else right now. Don't spend time trying to create complicated schedules that combine the 2 curriculums you like or that include 3 different supplements. Start with one curriculum, teach it to your utmost, and then wait and see if you feel like you need something else. If you get to October and you think, oh, it might be nice to have a little extra practice with something, or my kid might like some extra puzzles or something like that, you can always buy it in October. So start simple and don't overcomplicate things to start. Second, plan a consistent math time, at least 4 days per week. Math is definitely something that's learned slowly and incrementally, not in big gulps. So try to get that math time in 4 times a week, even if it's one of those times is sitting in the waiting room at the dentist office, or it is not a full 15 minutes. Doing math consistently will yield much better results. Third, quickly preview the lesson the day before. Sometimes this is hard to do. I know you're busy, you've got a lot going on, but when you're putting things away at the end of each lesson, if you can just flip to the next lesson, take a quick look at it so you know where you're heading, and if there's anything you need, it'll make your next day go a lot more smoothly. Fourth, don't just hand your child the workbook. Like I said, the workbook is the cherry on top, not the program when it comes to Math with Confidence. Focus on the instructor guide and then use the workbook at the end of the lessons. Fifth, you are the teacher, not the curriculum. And I know that might sound a little counterintuitive considering I'm sure you've spent lots of time thinking about curriculum, choosing this out. You bought this curriculum, but as a curriculum writer, I do my best to write lessons that reach sort of the widest variety of students that provide an in-depth math education for all children. But each kid's a little different. And so, for example, the pacing is kind of based on like the average child in my pilot tests. Your child might learn math a little faster or slower than that average child, and it's okay if you need to split lessons over 2 days, if you want to combine lessons sometimes. You have the authority to do that because you are the teacher who sees the real child in front of you. Treat the curriculum as, suggestions, a great framework. If an activity is really not working and you see, oh, I think this would work better for my kid, go for it. Because you are the teacher and you know your child best and you know your family and situation best. Six, if there's tears or frustration, take a break. I've tried to keep math with confidence as frustration free as possible, but there's always bad days. Sometimes somebody's getting sick, somebody needs to go use the bathroom, somebody's hungry, you're not having a great day. There's all sorts of reasons in a family why sometimes there's little tears or frustration around math. And usually it's not worth fighting through. I recommend that if you hit that point with your child, it's usually best to say, okay, we're done for today, and resume the next day when everybody's fresh. And related to that, expect the occasional bad day or week, especially in November and February. Those are often the months where kind of the bloom's off the rose. This is getting a little ho-hum. And so sometimes it just doesn't feel as exciting, or it just everybody's a little grumpy. And that's just a normal part of being a human. And what I mean most by this is to not blame yourself when that happens. It is not your fault when there's a few bad days in February. It's not the curriculum's fault. It's just part of the rhythm of homeschooling. So expect them, be ready to roll with them, be ready to have some extra snacks or do something fun. And don't feel like you have to reevaluate all of your life choices when you hit those little rough patches. Eight, keep the end in mind and don't worry if your child isn't on grade level. That's not super applicable to those of you who are just starting out with your little kindergartners. But in general, it's just helpful to know that especially in middle school, grade levels in math are very mushy. Kids can start algebra anywhere between seventh grade and 10th grade and still graduate with enough math classes to go to college. So if kindergarten takes you a little longer than a year and you start first grade next October, it's not the end of the world. So just don't worry too much about grade levels. Focus on helping your child take each incremental step each day, and you will get to where your child needs to be. Ninth, model a growth mindset in math for your child. In American culture, we tend to kind of label people as either mathy or not mathy, as opposed to that person worked hard at math, that person has really persevered, that person practiced. And so focus on a growth mindset really focuses on the fact that all of us can grow when we apply ourselves to learning, that our qualities are not innate and our abilities are not innate. And so in your conversation with your child about math, model that. Praise effort, not you're so smart at math. Praise you worked hard on that page. Ooh, I knew that was tricky and you figured it out. So focus on those parts of growth, not just treating your child as if they're mathy or not. And then 10th, this is a hard one for some people. Try to cultivate a growth mindset in math for yourself. You may have not had a very good math education. You may have found math very difficult, and you may not feel very confident in math yourself. That's pretty normal for a lot of adults. And if that's the case, I just want to challenge you to believe that you can grow too, to believe that even if math wasn't your best subject, that it's something that you're capable of doing. You are embarking on this really difficult thing, homeschooling your kids. And if you can do all the research necessary to gather curriculum, plan a schedule, teach your children, persevere on the bad days, I truly believe that you can learn math too. And many of the pilot testers, especially in my fifth and sixth grade level, they have just been amazed at the things that they understand how to do now because they've learned them along with your kid. So I hope that as you use, I'm sure you know kindergarten math, but I hope that as you grow in the levels with your child, that you are able to see that you can grow in math as well. And because this is my kindergarten workshop this week, I also have a little bonus tip, which is to remember that it's kindergarten. Here's a picture of me with my little guy on his first day of homeschool kindergarten. You can see all my boxes are arranged. I've got my materials and my map and a schedule and all those things. And this is just such a joyful year. You get to do science experiments, you get to snuggle up and read. You're going to have so much fun this year. And I just hope that no matter how math goes, that you won't let it detract from just really enjoying your kindergartner and enjoying just the special year of a 5-year-old who's just so excited about the world. I took that little guy to college last 2 weeks ago. Whew, it's been a big couple of weeks around here, and it goes fast. And so I just hope you'll really enjoy this year with your child. So that is the end of my slides. This is the um, so I'm going to do the Q&A in just a second. Um, and you will have links to the video and recording and the handouts as well in your email by the end of the day tomorrow. For people who are watching this recording afterward, I'll have the link to the handouts in the YouTube description. And then also, if you haven't bought your books yet, I want to let you know that Well-Trained Minds final summer sale ends Wednesday. They will have 40%, oh, I have that backwards. It's 40% off digital items, 35% off physical books. And all that information again in that handout that I email you. Um, so I will, let's see, I'm going to end this here and go over to the Q&A. And let me just find where I am. Let's see. Okay. And so, oh, it looks like we don't have any open questions. So if anybody has anything else that they're thinking through right now, please feel free to go ahead and put them in there. So question, will you go beyond fifth or sixth grade? So sixth grade will be the last level in the series. My expertise is really with elementary years, and sixth grade is a kind of a natural cutoff point within homeschool math curriculum. After that, children will be ready to start pre-algebra with any of the main homeschool programs that are out there. Any other questions that people have? Okay. Laura's asking, how quickly would you accelerate the lessons? It really depends, Laura, on what, it depends on the child. Watch your child and see how they're taking in the information. I would start with not doing more than 2 lessons a day. But if you're through them in 5 minutes, especially in those first few weeks that are very simple, and you're ready, child is ready for a third, go for it. But don't wear them out. I always like to leave them wanting more is a good philosophy of teaching in general. And so, hey, if you've had an easy day and can just move on to the next thing, that's fine too. Question about high school. I don't have strong recommendations for high school. I'll be trying to put that together next year. After I finish sixth grade, I'll try to put together some recommendations for what people can use beyond math with confidence. But yeah, I don't have that put together at this point. Um, let's see. Do you recommend taking a break with math over the summer or not? Oh, great question. Um, so I'm kind of 2 minds about this because I do think that everybody needs summer to feel different than the school year. For me, I certainly, as a homeschool mom, when my kids were younger, we needed the summer to have a different rhythm. It needed to feel like summer. But at the same time, I always needed a little structure to the day, even though it was summer. And I also felt that it was good for kids to just have a little bit to keep them fresh. So I see a related question about the Facts That Stick series. The Math Facts That Stick series is a series of books that's supplementary to Math with Confidence. There's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And they they're great for summer work. I often recommend that people use addition after first grade if their child needs a little extra practice with the addition facts, as subtraction after second grade, multiplication after third grade, and so on. I'm also thinking about putting together some summer bridge books, but I don't know if they'll be available next summer. In fact, they probably won't. But I'm hoping that to provide some options for that in the future. But in the meantime, to do a little bit of math work each day is probably a good thing for everybody, for mom sanity, and also for your kids to just continue what they're learning, to reinforce those skills, and so that it doesn't feel like quite so jarring to get back to lessons in the fall. Katie asks, will you ever add an option for videos to accompany your lessons? That's a possibility for the upper grades, not for the lower grades, though. I think that's really important for kids to have a live teacher, especially as they're so young and so concrete, and to get that immediate reinforcement in those lower grades. Um, a question from Katrine. I have two children, 4 years old and almost 6 years old. Ideally, how much time in math per day would you recommend for those ages? So short is what I'd recommend mostly. For a 4-year-old, 5 to 10 minutes of hands-on playful activities is plenty, and that's how preschool math with home is structured. And for a 6-year-old, somewhere around 20 minutes is generally appropriate, but most of that should be in sort of in the actual live teaching with the parent, like about 15 minutes of working with a parent, and then 5 to 10 minutes of independent workbook work. For most kids, that's plenty in a day. And again, leave them wanting more. The after, you can usually say, again, watch your kids. Some kids have longer attention spans, some have shorter. But when your child's starting to fade, they're not so attentive anymore. They're not really learning much or gaining much from those extra minutes. And some families even set a timer for math rather than trying to do a lesson per day. So if you know your child's generally good for 15 minutes, set a timer for 15 minutes and say, okay, we're going to do a great 15 minutes of math. We're going to be super focused, and then we'll take a break. And if you are in the middle of a lesson at that point, it's okay to just stop and pick it up there, if that's what helps your child feel the freshest and it is the best use of their time. Um, Mama Kairos asks, if you have a challenged learner, would you start back with Kinder for a solid foundation or go off the placement guide? I would definitely recommend going off of the placement guide. If you have a child who's, say, 8 and is struggling in math, you might go back to first grade if that's where their skills are at, but you likely don't need to do the kindergarten level. The kindergarten level is really written for children at the developmental, like at the brain development of a kindergarten age child. And so for older children, it likely would be too slow for them. And it might also, it might feel like too babyish for them. So the lowest for an older child, the lowest I would go back to would be first grade. Um, let's see. So just another question about math facts that stick, overview of it and how to use it. Um, the So I explained that it's those four books that are supplementary. And if you're using Math with Confidence, you might not need it at all. The math facts are really incorporated throughout Math with Confidence with lots of practice, lots of review, lots of games. And for a lot of kids, that's plenty of practice with the math facts. So I only recommend adding it to Math with Confidence if you discover that your child needs more practice than what is in the book, or to use for summer bridge work. Um, let's see. Jennifer says, we'll have 3 children in school this year, and my youngest is very keen to start. I feel a little overwhelmed to do 3 lessons a day. Do you have any advice? Oh, yes, 3 lessons a day is a lot, but it can be done. It just requires kind of being organized and strategic. Up to you whether you want to start that youngest. If you decide you want to hold off or maybe get your older 2 started before adding the youngest, I would completely support that decision. Um, I think the main ways to make sure that to keep lessons streamlined. Make sure your math kits are ready to go. Make sure you do that quick preview the night before. And also having the older kids play games with the younger often is a great way to save some time. There's a lot of games throughout the program, and older siblings often love to play the games for the lower levels. That can be a time saver as well. Um, And that's a question that's often discussed in the Math with Confidence Facebook community. There's a lot of moms of multiples who have great suggestions there. So I'd also recommend looking at the thread there or posting that question there. Tiffany asks, as far as writing numbers, do you recommend 5 and 6-year-olds work on strengthening gross motor skills first before working on the fine motor skills of writing numbers? If so, any specific activities to get their hands ready for writing? So it's a great question, Tiffany, but one I'm a little reluctant to get too far into just because that's not my area of expertise. My understanding of gross motor and fine motor skills is really to be kind of developing them in tandem, to be giving kids lots of opportunities to use their hands to strengthen their hands. So lots of playing with lots of playing with Play-Doh and clay, lots of scissors, lots of different things, but also kicking balls, climbing at the playground, running, jumping, biking. All of these things help our brains develop and help our brains connect to our muscles and our bodies. Um, and so I recommend, as far as math goes, doing what you can to practice handwriting skills and fine motor skills outside of math time, and then modifying your math lessons as needed to best fit your child's fine motor skills. So if writing is very difficult for your child, that doesn't mean that it needs to keep them from learning math, but you need to assess how much writing you're willing to do for your child, and figure out what that balance looks like for you. Um, And then I see Larissa asked, does the ratio of parent teaching to independent work decrease with each math level? And so let's see the ratio. Yes, it definitely does. In kindergarten, it's what, like 14 minutes to 1 minute or 2 minutes. And so I've tried, as I've written the levels, I've worked quite closely with the pilot testers to make sure that the amount of parent teaching does not increase beyond 15 minutes per day, because I know many parents are trying to fit in multiple lessons per day with multiple grade levels. Um, but generally, there's at least 10 to 15 minutes of parent led instruction each day throughout all the levels, but then the amount of independent work that the child does ramps up gradually over the course of kindergarten through sixth grade, to where kids are working independently for 20 to 30 minutes by sixth grade. Question, would you consider creating a challenge or puzzles workbook for kids that need more of a challenge? Something similar to a summer bridge workbook for the mathy kids. And yes, that is something I've thought about. Let's see, I pilot tested the sixth grade level this past year, and we'll be revising it over this course of this next year for publication next summer. And I have a lot of ideas about things I would like to now start to create to go along with the younger levels. So thanks for that suggestion. And yeah, I will definitely keep that in mind. All right, well, it's 5:03 Eastern, so we've filled our hour. I hope that this has been helpful to you, that you feel equipped and ready to start your year and teach kindergarten math with confidence. I'll be doing workshops throughout the week for the higher grade levels of math with confidence. So if you haven't signed up for any of those and are teaching them, feel free to do so. And look for that handout and the link to the video in your email later on tonight or sometime tomorrow. Thanks so much for attending, and happy math. Hope you have a great evening.